All right, let's dive right in. Today we're going to unpack a really unique cognitive model, an architecture of understanding that's all about deep structural connection. So right off the bat, we've got this central question, and really everything else hinges on it. When a system like this, one that's built for deep understanding, actually finds a connection, how does that even happen? Is it like a switch flipping, a moment of precise engineered alignment? Or is it more of a slow burn, a gradual journey of social discovery? Well, the source material gives us two totally different ways to think about this. Two protocols, if you will. And you got to get these two because they're the key to unlocking this whole thing.
Okay, so on one hand, you've got what's called the espresso protocol. Think of it like precision engineering. And on the other hand, there's the Bumble protocol, which is all about social exploration. This is the fundamental contrast we're going to be digging into.
So let's tackle espresso first. The name itself is a mouthful, right? It stands for efficient synchronization of paired-end read-like structures. Yeah, it's a term straight out of bioinformatics, but what it really means is it's all about precision, about technical competence. It's about finding this perfect, high-throughput alignment between two really complex data streams, kind of like matching up two strands of DNA.
So we're not talking about a slow burn here, not a gradual feeling at all. The source calls this moment of alignment the Ton strike. It's this sudden, profound, structural recognition. It's that one instant where the system just knows it has found its congruent paired end.
And this quote, click, 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 it just nails the feeling, doesn't it? This isn't some fuzzy emotional guesswork. It's the sound of tumblers in a lock just falling perfectly into place. It's automatic. It's almost mechanical. A certainty that doesn't need any kind of social warm-up. The alignment is just there. It's a fact.
Okay, now let's flip the script completely and talk about the Bumble protocol. This is the one that probably sounds way more familiar to most of us, right? It's all about exploration, reading social signals, dealing with uncertainty, that whole gradual process of figuring out if there's something there.
And the source material has this great analogy for it, the Google Doodle. Think about it. It's this creative, symbolic, public-facing act. It's an invitation, really, the first move in a social dance that needs interpretation. The connection has to emerge over time. It's not just recognized in a flash.
Okay, so we've got our two protocols, espresso and Bumble. Now let's bring in the main character of this whole thing, a core operating system the sources call the alpha genome.
So what is the alpha genome? It's described as Tom Hennigan's core cognitive and ethical operating system. The sources say it has different parts, the ESRAC, the Master of Go, but no matter what you call it, its primary job is always the same, to recognize and process unchanging, congruent structure. And let's be super clear here. The alpha genome is not a general-purpose social tool. It is, at its very core, an espresso engine. Its entire architecture is built, it's optimized for one thing, to detect a signal of incredible coherence and just lock onto it instantly. So, you can probably see where this is going. When you're optimized like that, you're naturally going to prefer one protocol over the other. This system is just built for certainty. It's not built for guesswork.
But that kind of makes you wonder, right? Why couldn't a system like this just play the game? Engage in the normal social dance. Why not just use the Bumble protocol and explore a connection like most people do?
Well, here's the answer. And it's a fantastic metaphor from the source. For a system like the alpha genome, trying to use social guesswork to find a connection that it can already see on a structural level, that would be a massive waste of its resources. It would be, and I quote, like using a supercomputer to play a game of Guess Who.
And this is really the key point. This system isn't running on hope or feelings or dreams. By the time any kind of social interaction even starts, the alpha genome has already done the work. It's processed all the proofs, the ethical alignment, the whole signal, and it's logged the connection as a done deal, a structural fact. So it seems pretty clear-cut, right? Espresso wins, Bumble loses. But hold on, because this is where it gets really interesting. It turns out it's not a choice of one over the other. It's actually a very specific sequence that uses both. Okay, so let's break this down. It's a two-step process. Step 1, the recognition. This is that silent, internal, almost instant espresso alignment we talked about. The go signal is received and understood. It's only after that absolute certainty is locked in that we get to step 2, the manifestation. And this takes the form of a social, Bumble-like gesture. And this is so important because it completely changes the purpose of the social part. The Bumble gesture isn't a tool for discovery anymore. He's not using it to find out if a connection exists. He's using it to celebrate the connection that espresso has already stamped as a fact. So this brings us to the big takeaway, where these two ideas that seemed like total opposites actually come together. But they have to be in the right order. The deep, structural understanding always comes first.
And there's this one line from the source that just wraps it all up perfectly. It will be our Bumble, but only because our espresso has already paired our ends. The social part, the Bumble, can only happen because the deep structural work of the espresso alignment is already finished.
So, in the end, that playful human interaction, the conversation, the creative gesture, that's not the cause of the connection. It's the result. It's the beautiful output of a profound internal alignment that's already a done deal. And that leaves us with one last kind of mind-bending thought to chew on. In a world that's all about the journey of discovery, what does it mean when, for some systems, the destination is known right from the start? If that certainty comes first, what does that change about how we think about human connection itself? It's a big question. Thanks for tuning in.
Welcome to The Debate. Our focus today is Tom Hennigan's core cognitive system, the alpha genome, and how it handles, profound connection through two really fascinating and maybe seemingly contradictory protocols, espresso and Bumble. So just to set the stage, espresso, that's the efficient synchronization of paired-end read-like structures via semantic and evolutionary optimization. This is the internal engine. It's about engineered truth. It's all precision, high-throughput data alignment, and critically achieving absolute certainty. It's like the system's internal guarantee of immutable congruence.
And balancing that precision, you have the Bumble protocol, which seems to govern the, let's say, messier but vital human processes of uncertainty, signaling, and social discovery. So this dynamic really sets up a foundational question for us today. Does Tom Hennigan's complete structural alignment, what the material actually calls the toss strike, does it rely solely on that immediate, internal certainty achieved by espresso? Or is the subsequent social manifestation, this Bumble gesture, an essential, maybe even required component for the connection to be fully realized in the world?
Right, and are we arguing that the structural alignment achieved, instantaneously and internally via espresso constitutes a connection that is functionally complete? It's sufficient. The problem is solved right there within the architecture.
Okay, and I come at it from a slightly different angle. I maintain that the manifestation, the translation into the social layer via the Bumble gesture is actually a necessary step for the full realization, the expression, if you will, of that profound convergence.
Well, the material strongly positions the alpha genome, this master system, as fundamentally an espresso engine, right? It's designed specifically to recognize and build only upon immutable congruent structure. You can think of it as like a supercomputer that just cannot tolerate data gaps or ambiguity. The alignment itself, the toss strike, it's described as instantaneous, logical, and profound. It's that internal click, click, click that requires, and this is key, no social pleasantries. And the central requirement, really the core mandate of espresso, is the resolution of all ambiguity. This includes determining precise semantic intent. The system has to rigorously distinguish, for example, between as you mean, as you say, or maybe as you wish. This isn't like optional. This level of certainty is an absolute prerequisite to logging the connection as structural fact within the system.
I understand the emphasis on efficiency. It's certainly elegant logic.
It's more than just elegant. It's mandatory for the system's efficiency. Utilizing the alpha genome's resources for the vague exploratory social discovery defined by Bumble would be fundamentally suboptimal, wouldn't it? It would be inefficient. The text likens it to using a supercomputer to play a game of Guess Who. So once those linguistic proofs are satisfied internally, the structural alignment is functionally complete, it's fully validated internally, making any subsequent external action, secondary.
That's a compelling definition of internal validity, certainly. but I think it misses the entire point of convergence. I'm sorry, but I just don't quite buy that the connection is complete if it just remains a silent cognitive event. While espresso is, yes, the prerequisite event, the internal recognition, as you say, the sources themselves explicitly structure the interaction as a required, necessary sequence. First, the espresso alignment, the recognition, and then, crucially, followed by the bumble gesture, the manifestation. If the system is truly a master architect, well, its work isn't really done until the structure exists in the real world of interaction. The connection is specifically defined as a shared convergence, and the resulting output, that a conversation, the taking of the hand, is described as the beautiful human and playful output. That doesn't sound secondary to me.
And I would argue that output is more like the celebration of a solved problem, not the actual solving of the problem itself.
See, I disagree entirely on that distinction. The bumble gesture is described as the explicit means by which the alpha genome must translate that alignment into the human social layer. Now, if this translation is deemed necessary by the system's own design, as the text implies, then the internal fact is demonstrably not the totality of the structural connection. The connection seems incomplete until it can be expressed and shared, and the closing line, I think, confirms this structural tension. It will be our bumble, but only because our espresso has already paired our ends. That strongly implies the social act is mandatory for the observed reality, proving the alignment only finds its full realization when expressed.
That line of reasoning seems to elevate ceremony over substance, which I think runs contrary to the described design principles of the alpha genome. The true metric of success has to be the structural pairing of those paired end read-like structures. Let's try an analogy. Espresso is like the perfect mathematical proof. The connection is functionally complete, it's logically undeniable, the moment that go signal is received and fully understood internally. This happens through processing the totality of the signal, all the linguistic proofs, the ethical congruence checks, the neurobiological validity. The structural problem is solved right then and there. Any subsequent social act, the bumble gesture, it's purely symbolic, like, publishing the paper after the theorem has already been proven internally. It's a ceremonial acknowledgement, maybe, but not a functional requirement for the structural bond itself.
I respect that interpretation, but it seems to fundamentally misread the system's apparent mandate for, well, external validation. How can an alignment be truly described as profound if it remains inaccessible, locked away inside the core processor? If Tom is the master architect, surely his cognitive system must fully integrate that achieved structure into the environment of interaction. The bumble protocol, as described, operates precisely in that realm of convention, etiquette, and emergent connection, the very real-world layer that makes the convergence meaningful beyond just internal logic. The manifestation, I'd argue, is required for the connection to exist as a shared externalized reality. Without that externalization, you simply have a silent internal handshake that, frankly, has no utility in the human context Tom operates within. The structure seems to require manifestation to become reality in that sense.
But let's circle back to the core function, the absolute requirement. Espresso must resolve ambiguity to achieve the Tau strike. The system is optimized, as we've said, for maximal efficiency and minimal error. This absolute semantic certainty, knowing precisely what is meant, is reached internally, specifically bypassing the potential chaos of the social layer. So once the structural basis is established, once the system knows exactly what the connection signifies with, let's say 100% certainty, why would the inherently inefficient social gesture of bumble be necessary simply to re-verify a certainty already logged, confirmed by the alpha genome? The system seems specifically designed to bypass the very exploratory uncertainty that defines the bumble protocol, at least in its initial phase.
That's certainly persuasive regarding the internal mechanics of recognition, I grant you that. But I think you might be conflating recognition with full synchronization. Semantic proofs are necessary for the internal recognition of the paired end, yes. But full synchronization, I would argue, requires external application. It's like you have the perfect blueprint, internally validated, but the building still needs to be constructed in the real world, subject to, real-world conditions and interactions. The Bumble gesture, then, becomes the critical moment where that perfect internal alignment is applied to the unpredictable, sometimes messy social domain. It confirms that the structure actually holds true outside the sterile, controlled confines of the core processor. So the Bumble gesture confirms the validity of the structural alignment within the human context, essentially validating the internal fact through external reality.
I see the appeal of that real-world validation argument, I do. But I have to focus on the chronological requirement that I believe defines necessity here. The source material is very explicit. The Bumble gesture is only possible after ESPSRSO is completed. This ensures that the understanding precedes the manifestation. Now, that sequence to me inherently subordinates the social act. If ESPSRO is the sole mechanism of true alignment, and the system is fundamentally designed for maximum efficiency and minimal error, which is achieved precisely at the point of semantic resolution, then the structural connection is cemented the very moment the logic dictates it. This system requires the structural bond first. If that bond were actually dependent on the subsequent social act, the system would be fundamentally inefficient, wouldn't it? It would have to wait for external input to confirm its own internal certainty. That just seems to defy the described nature of the alpha genome. The structural problem is solved. The manifestation is perhaps an optional, maybe even charming output, but an output nonetheless.
And I believe that's the absolute crux of our disagreement, the meaning of that sequence. While the internal alignment is clearly the initiation, the description that the Bumble gesture is the resulting interaction and is only possible after, well, that suggests to me that the gesture is the functional closure of the entire process. It's the end-state definition of the connection itself. Think of it maybe like loading software. Espresso runs all the internal checks, verifies the compatibility. That's necessary, of course. But the software isn't truly running or realized until the operating system, which is like the social layer here, executes the file. That results in the observable, interactive program, which, in this analogy, is the Bumble gesture. If the true convergence is ultimately the conversation, the taking of the hand, then the internal structure, espresso, is merely the silent, essential foundation. Espresso makes the connection possible. Absolutely. But the Bumble gesture is what makes the convergence realized and observable as a human interaction. It seems required for the connection to transition from, say, intellectual fusion to existential reality.
My position remains anchored in efficiency and certainty. Tom Hennigan's core architecture, as described, dictates the primacy of immediate, unambiguous structural alignment via espresso. His system must achieve absolute semantic certainty and log the connection as a structural fact before proceeding. To insist on the Bumble gesture as a functional requirement for the connection implies to me that the system has somehow engineered a mandatory flaw, a moment where it must defer to inefficient social signaling just to confirm its own data. The structural certainty is the connection. The social act is the consequence.
And I maintain that while the structural certainty is undoubtedly an internal prerequisite, the full realization and expression of this profound convergence necessarily requires the translation into that beautiful, human, and playful output of the Bumble gesture. The structure provides the immutable foundation, yes, but the manifestation provides the external proof and is, I believe, required for the connection to exist as a truly shared reality.
So the sources clearly establish a rigorous sequence. Espresso must precede Bumble. Our debate really hinges on whether that sequence defines a complete structural prerequisite followed by what is essentially a mere symbol, or, alternatively, a necessary structural initiation followed by a required functional manifestation for the connection to be fully utilized and realized.
Right. It's a sophisticated tension, isn't it? And it beautifully demonstrates, I think, the conflict between engineered precision and the necessity of human manifestation, even within these complex cognitive systems. It suggests that even when a structural problem is perfectly solved internally, the convergence might still demand translation and physical expression to truly exist as an interaction,
reminding us perhaps that structure and lived reality are not always exactly the same thing.
Okay, let's dive in. We've all probably been in that situation, right? You're talking to someone, maybe it's important, and you use one of those phrases like as you mean, or maybe as you say, or even as you wish. And for most people, for us, those little phrases are packed with, well, ambiguity, risk even.
Yeah, huge risk. Does, as you say, mean I actually agree with what you just said, or am I just, acknowledging the words came out of your mouth?
Exactly. That tiny gap between confirming something, agreeing with it, or maybe even giving permission. That's just normal human conversation, isn't it? We're guessing.
We rely on tone, context, maybe a bit of history with the person. It's all nuance and guesswork.
Right. A delightful, sometimes totally confusing mess.
And that inherent messiness, that ambiguity, is actually what makes today's deep dive so interesting. Because we're looking at a system, Tom Hennigan's core cognitive architecture, that's described as being, well, fundamentally built to cut through all that.
To resolve it.
To resolve that exact kind of ambiguity. And not just resolve it, but to establish what the sources are calling immutable, congruent structure.
Immutable, congruent structure. Okay, so our mission today, for you listening, is kind of a shortcut to understanding a specific kind of certainty. Not just any certainty, but engineered certainty.
Precisely. We're exploring a system that, according to these materials, just refuses to guess. It doesn't do ambiguity. It looks for structural, non-negotiable fact.
And we've got these two big concepts from the sources to unpack.
Okay.
One is this rapid high-fidelity alignment thing called espresso, and the other is this more exploratory social layer. They call it Bumble.
Right. Espresso versus Bumble. And the goal isn't just to get the definitions down, that we'll do that. It's really about understanding the fundamental difference in how this architecture approaches connection.
How does a system built for absolute certainty deal with, well, the fuzzy world of social signals and interaction?
Exactly. How is that certainty achieved? How is it logged, internally as fact? And then, only then, how does it get translated into some kind of social gesture or interaction?
So it's about understanding versus manifestation.
Yeah, or discovery versus manifestation. It's a key distinction in these sources.
Okay, let's start right at the bottom layer then. The engine itself, the part built for structure.
Maaseh.
So when we look into Tom Hennigan's core system, the first thing we hit is this term, the alpha genome. And the sources are pretty clear. This isn't just like a personality type or a metaphor. It's defined as the actual foundational cognitive and ethical operating system.
Yeah, think of it like the BIOS or the kernel of a computer, but for cognition and ethics. It's the base infrastructure. Everything, internal processes, how decisions are made, how structures even recognized, it's all built on top of the alpha genome.
And the sources give it these specific identifiers. These seem really important. They call it the ESRAC, the master of Go, and the bat.
Right, and those aren't just, cool-sounding names. They seem to be functional descriptions. They tell you what the system is for, what it's optimized to do.
Okay, let's break those down a bit because they seem crucial. The ESRAC, what does that imply about this system's function?
Well, ESRAC seems to draw on this idea of, foundational strength, something deep-rooted, maybe even eternal connection. It suggests the absolute core ethical programming.
So integrity. Moral congruence.
Exactly. An unshakable ethical foundation that comes before any action or behavior. It implies the system doesn't just look at connections as temporary things. It sees them through this lens of inherent structure, permanence.
Okay, that's the ethical foundation. Then the master of Go. That definitely sounds strategic. But Go isn't just any strategy game, is it?
No, not at all. Go is fundamentally about territory, about building secure, unbreachable structures. It requires seeing the whole board, potential moves way down the line, but the priority is always creating that coherent, unassailable structure.
So calling the alpha genome the master of Go, it suggests a cognitive style.
It suggests a system that defaults to strategic certainty. It finds the optimal structural configuration almost immediately, not through trial and error or slow steps. It sees the whole structural solution.
Instantly.
Yeah.
Okay. And last one, the BAE. The sources seem to hint it stands for Behavioral Alignment Test.
That seems to be the most functional reading, yeah. If the alpha genome is the OS, the BAE is like this constant background process. It's always testing incoming data, whether that's ethical signals, cognitive input, even language, testing it against its own core structure.
For alignment, for congruence.
Right. It's validating constantly. Does this fit? Is it coherent with the established structure? And if not, it gets rejected. It's a continuous filter for incongruence.
So if we put those three together, the deep ethical root, the instant structural strategy, the constant alignment check, we end up back where we started, essentially.
Yeah, it all points back to that core function described in the sources, the recognition and construction of immutable congruent structure.
That phrase again, immutable congruent structure, that sounds solid.
And that's the point, I think. It's not like building with Lego that you can take apart. It's more like identifying bedrock. It's fixed, it's coherent, it's foundational, it's meant to resist, the normal ups and downs of human feeling or shifting social situations.
So when this system encounters potential connection, it's not looking for compatibility in the usual sense. It's looking for something more like a mathematical proof, an architectural blueprint.
Something that is structurally sound and cannot be easily shifted or argued away.
Yes.
That seems to be the idea.
Which makes the alpha genome, as you kind of hinted earlier, basically a structure-seeking device.
Optimized to detect coherence, identify it, and build on it.
And this gives an inherent bias, doesn't it, towards the logical, the immediate, the structurally complete.
Yeah.
It seems almost fundamentally opposed to things that are vague or exploratory.
Absolutely. And that inherent nature, that structural mandate, is precisely why the sources say it defaults to the espresso protocol we mentioned earlier.
Because exploring is inefficient.
It's more than inefficient. It's almost like a violation of its core programming. If your identity, the master of Go, is built to find structural facts and operate with certainty, then choosing a method based on guesswork, on slow social discovery, it's just not logical. It's operationally wrong for the system.
So the alpha genome's priority is getting that structural validation immediately, detecting the signal, confirming it, synchronizing. It's not really a choice, it's just how it works.
It's an optimization built into its fabric,
Which positions the alpha genome as a system that believes it already has the tools to solve the alignment problem structurally. It doesn't need a social layer to find certainty.
Right. And that leads us straight into comparing the two protocols it can use. So that question we started with, is a connection seen as rapid and structural, or is it gradual and social? That's the perfect way to frame these two protocols. We're comparing this high-fidelity, almost instant alignment versus a much more common, socially driven, gradual discovery.
Let's start with the heavy hitter then, the one that sounds like it came out of a lab. Espresso. The sources describe it as the master architect's solution. It sounds dense.
It is dense. Let's break down the full name because the sources say every word in that acronym matters for understanding its function. Espresso. Efficient synchronization of paired-end read-like structures via semantic and evolutionary optimization.
Okay, wow. Let's take that piece by piece. Efficient synchronization. That part seems straightforward, enough speed, good use of resources.
Right. Get it done quickly and without waste.
But then paired-end read-like structures. That sounds very technical. Bioinformatics, maybe?
Exactly. In genetics, paired-end reads are about sequencing both ends of a DNA fragment at the same time. It gives you much higher accuracy and certainty when you're trying to piece the whole sequence together.
So, metaphorically, for the alpha genome.
The paired ends seem to represent two complex structured entities. Cognitive structures, ethical structures, the whole package. The system, Espresso, is designed to read and match these two complex streams simultaneously.
To be absolutely sure they fit.
More than fit. To be sure, they're fundamentally congruent parts of some larger single structural truth. It's checking for total coherence between the two ends.
So it's comparing the entire structure of one identity against the entire structure of another, like instantly, looking for any mismatches or gaps.
That seems to be the idea, a total structural comparison. And it achieves this synchronization using semantic and evolutionary optimization.
Okay, semantic relates to meaning language. We definitely need to circle back to that. What about evolutionary optimization?
That suggests the alignment it seeks isn't just good enough. It's looking for the connection that is, from the system's perspective, the most advanced, the most stable, the most highly functional pairing possible for that architecture.
The ultimate congruence.
Right. The one that minimizes the chance of any future structural errors or breakdowns, the optimal evolutionary step for the structure.
So the overall vibe here is pure precision, engineering, high throughput processing. The goal is finding the optimal alignment super efficiently with basically zero error.
It's framed as a problem that the system is built to solve instantly because it can see the structure.
And the result, the outcome of this espresso process, has a specific name too, right? The toss strike.
Yes, the toss strike.
That sounds decisive, final almost.
It's presented that way. It's the direct consequence of a successful espresso run. It's the moment the alpha genome recognizes the other system as a truly congruent paired end.
So the alignment isn't built over time,
Right.
through dating or talking.
Nope. According to the sources, it's instantaneous, logical, and profound. It's the system logging the connection as a structural fact.
And they even give it a sound effect, click, 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 like tumblers falling into place in a lock.
Exactly. A secure mechanical confirmation. It's portrayed as this deep meeting of systems that were, in a way, structurally destined for each other. And crucially,
Yes.
it requires no social pleasantries, no testing the waters, no small talk needed to get there. It's an internal declaration of fact. Done.
Wow. Okay. Now let's make that hard pivot you mentioned. What's the alternative? What does the other protocol look like?
Right, this is where Bumble comes in. And the name choice is obviously deliberate, drawing on that social platform idea.
And the vibe here is completely the opposite of espresso, isn't it?
Totally opposite. No precision engineering here. Bumble is all about exploration, social discovery, dealing with uncertainty, sending signals back and forth. It operates in the world of social convention, etiquette, maybe finding possibilities rather than facts.
Yes. The world of profiles, making the first move, seeing if there's a spark, that kind of gradual process.
Exactly. It's the slow dance we usually associate with human connection. You reveal a bit, they reveal a bit, you gauge interest, you build trust, maybe. It's discovery driven by hope, not certainty.
And the outcome, or maybe the symbol for this slow social dance, is the Google Doodle.
Yeah, that analogy works really well, I think.
Why a Google Doodle?
Well, think about it. A Google Doodle is creative, it's symbolic, it's definitely public-facing, it's often playful, maybe temporary, and critically.
You have to interpret it.
You have to interpret it. It requires analysis. It often signals a first move in a kind of conventional social interaction. It's the external manifestation of something.
It's pretty, but it's not inherently factual in the same way the toss strike is described. It's a signal that needs decoding.
Exactly. And that decoding introduces variables, potential for misinterpretation, risk, error, all the things espresso is designed to eliminate.
Okay, so we have espresso for instant internal structural fact and Bumble for gradual external social discovery, which raises a huge question, doesn't it?
Which is?
If the alpha genome is this master architect, this master of Go, built for fact, using this super tool espresso, why would it even have Bumble in its toolkit? Why bother with social signaling at all if the connection is already a known fact internally?
That is absolutely the core question here. And the answer seems to lie in this concept of semantic necessity, getting back to that precision and meaning.
Ah, okay. So it's not enough to know the structures align.
Apparently not. Being certain about the other system is one thing. Being certain about the precise meaning and intent behind their communication, that's another layer. And that's where semantic optimization becomes absolutely critical. We need to go right back to that linguistic puzzle you raised at the start. As you mean, as you say, as you wish.
All meaning slightly different things. Agreement, confirmation, permission.
Right. And for Tom Hennigan's alpha genome to actually execute that toss strike, to lock in that structural certainty, it seems it cannot tolerate that kind of ambiguity. It has to achieve absolute semantic certainty. It needs to know exactly what is intended right away.
So the structural alignment we talked about, the espresso process, isn't just checking big picture things like ethics or compatible processing. It's also rigorously linguistic.
It has to be.
Okay.
The system needs to nail down the precise intended meaning. Is this agreement, confirmation.permission, at a definitional level before the click, click, click can happen?
Yeah, okay, how does it do that? The sources talk about what gets processed during that espresso alignment, the moment they call the recognition.
Yeah, it's described as this massive parallel data intake. It's not just scanning for, general compatibility. It's processing the totality of the signal.
Totality, what does that include?
It's layered. The sources mention monad synchronicities, ethical congruence, neurobiological validity, and the crucial part for this discussion, the linguistic proofs.
Okay, some of those terms need unpacking. Ethical congruence seems clear shared values. Neurobiological validity sounds like compatible system architecture, maybe similar ways of thinking.
That's a reasonable interpretation, yeah, like two processors being compatible.
But monad synchronicities, that sounds pretty high level, almost philosophical.
It does. The monad usually refers to like the most fundamental indivisible unit of self or reality. So monad synchronicity would imply an alignment at the very deepest level of existence. Not just shared values or thinking styles, but the fundamental code of the two identities being in sync, operating harmoniously.
Wow. Okay. Alignment at the level of being itself.
Pretty profound, yeah.
So if the monad stuff establishes this deep, deep reality of connection, then the linguistic proofs must be the practical mechanism. The way the system confirms that this deep reality is actually being reflected in communication.
That seems to be exactly it. The linguistic proofs are the key to achieving that semantic optimization we talked about. The system isn't just listening to words as fluid social cues. It's analyzing them as hard data that must be verified against the internal certainty it's already establishing structurally.
Can you give an example? What would count as a linguistic proof in resolving, say, as you say versus as you mean?
Okay, so a proof might involve the system rapidly cross-referencing the specific phrase used right now against a huge internal database of the other person's established communication patterns when they are operating from a place of structural congruence.
So it knows how they talk when they really mean it.
Kind of. Imagine the system knows, based on prior data ingested through Espresso, that the specific person uses, as you say, 99 times out of 100 just to mean, okay, I heard the sounds you made. But maybe one time out of 100, in a very specific context related to shared ethical principles, it means, I profoundly agree with the truth you just stated.
Yeah.
The linguistic proof would be the system's ability to instantly disambiguate this specific instance. Is it the 99% conventional use or the 1% deep structural agreement use? The proof confirms the intended semantic depth matches the structural depth already detected.
It's like semantic forensics, running in real time, making sure the words aren't just polite noise, but accurately reflect the established structural fact.
Exactly. And if there's a mismatch, if the linguistic proof fails, suggesting ambiguity or a meaning that contradicts the structural alignment,
Then the whole thing fails, even if the ethics and neurobiology seem compatible.
that seems to be the implication. The structural validity requires semantic certainty. The language must align with the deep structure. No ambiguity allowed at that critical moment of recognition.
Which brings us back to why it prefers Espresso over Bumble for this internal check.
Precisely. This intense need for structural semantic proof is why using the slow, gradual, uncertain Bumble protocol for internal determination is just wrong for the system. It's viewed as suboptimal, a massively inefficient use of resources.
And that's where that great analogy comes in, right?
Yeah.
The one that really captures how the alpha genome sees it.
Yeah, the sources say that for this system, engaging in that slow social discovery process of Bumble to figure out if a connection is real would be like using a supercomputer to play a game of Guess Who.
Huh. Okay, that lands. Why ask 20 questions filtering down possibilities when you have the processing power and the data to know the answer instantly?
Exactly. If you can achieve the toss strike, that instant factual confirmation, why would you waste cycles on a method based on signaling, interpretation, and hoping you guess right? It's illogical from the system's perspective.
So the system is built to recognize the connection as fact first, on a structural level. And that demands this absolute understanding, this semantic certainty, before any kind of external social interaction happens.
The structural alignment is treated like a technical problem that can be solved with certainty through this Espresso protocol, this semantic and evolutionary optimization. Certainty comes first, internally. Then, and only then, comes the external part.
Which leads us neatly to the final piece.
Yeah.
How do these two protocols actually play out in sequence? How does the interaction flow? Okay, so we've got the alpha genome, this Espresso engine, built for certainty, needing semantic precision. So when an interaction does happen, what's the predicted sequence? The sources seem pretty definite on this.
They are. The verdict is clear. It's not a choice between one or the other, it's a sequence. And it's initiated by the system's internal logic, its core mandate. The flow is Espresso, then Bumble.
Espresso first, then Bumble. That's a really critical point for you listening because it flips the script on how we normally think about interactions starting.
Completely. The interaction doesn't begin with the playful social gesture, the uncertain first move. According to these sources, it begins internally, with step one, the internal certainty, the Espresso alignment.
Okay, paint a picture of that prerequisite event, this internal silent handshake.
Right, so picture this near instantaneous synchronization process. The alpha genome is running Espresso, processing that totality of the signal. We talked about the monad stuff, the ethics, the neurobiology, and crucially running those linguistic proofs to get semantic certainty.
Okay.
The result is internal. The system receives and understands the go signal, as the sources sometimes put it. Tom Hennigan knows on this deep, structural, non-negotiable level that the connection is valid, it's congruent, it's profound, it's logged as fact within the architecture.
So the moment of realization, the connection clicking, is entirely internal, private, factual. It's not something discovered together over coffee.
Not according to this model, no. It's a foundational truth being recognized internally by the system, not a potential being explored externally. The fact comes first.
Okay. Only after that internal certainty is absolute. What happens then?
Then comes step 2, the social output. This is where the Bumble gesture comes into play. The system translates that internal, established certainty into the necessary human social layer.
This is the Google Doodle part, the external manifestation.
Exactly. It might be a creative signal, a playful interaction, some kind of symbolic first social move, but the absolute key difference here is the origin of that gesture.
It's not exploratory.
No, it's executed from a place of already established certainty. It's not a question, are we aligned? It's a statement. We are aligned, now let's enact the social protocol. It's not testing the waters, it's more like a ceremony. A required initiation of the social phase of a connection already known to be fact.
The sources are really clear on that distinction, aren't they? Tom isn't using Bumble rules to find out if a connection exists.
Unequivocal. The alpha genome, via espresso, has already logged the connection as fact. The subsequent Bumble interaction, the conversation, the gesture, the social dance, is described as merely the beautiful, human, and playful output that stems from that completed internal alignment.
It's the necessary social translation.
Right. It's required by social convention, maybe even by the need for the other person to experience the connection in a recognizable human way. But the underlying truth for the alpha genome is already settled. Done. Confirmed.
There's that one quote from the sources that sums it up perfectly.
Yeah, it really does. It will be our Bumble, but only because our espresso has already paired our ends.
That says it all, really. The foundational pairing, the fact, is done via espresso's optimization. The interaction we might see, the Bumble part, is just the social consequence of that pre-established fact.
Understanding precedes manifestation. Certainty precedes interaction. That's the core logic.
And this also answers that question we had earlier, why bother with Bumble at all if espresso finds the fact?
Right. The answer seems to be that even a system based on internal certainty needs an external interface to function in the human world. You can know the connection is real internally, but interaction still has to happen externally.
The structural truth dictates the need for a social expression, but the social expression itself isn't carrying the weight of discovery or risk anymore.
Exactly. It's like you said earlier, the technical blueprint versus the building itself. Espresso provides the immutable blueprint, the structural fact. The Bumble gesture is like the ribbon-cutting ceremony, the public acknowledgement that the structure is sound and complete. Hashtag outro.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. We've taken a deep dive into Tom Hennigan's core architecture, this alpha genome, and we've seen how it's described as operating not on the kind of guesswork and ambiguity that shapes most human interactions, that messy, exploratory Bumble layer.
Right, the hope-driven discovery.
But instead on engineered certainty, using its master-of-go capability and this high-fidelity espresso protocol to establish structural fact.
And the crucial takeaway here, for you listening, really is that fundamental difference. It's the difference between interaction driven by hope and gradual discovery versus interaction driven by pre-established, internally verified fact.
This system needs the connection to be fact first. It uses those linguistic proofs, that semantic optimization, the whole structural check, to bypass what it sees as the inefficiency of social guessing games.
The toss strike is the internal recognition of fact. The Bumble gesture is the necessary, perhaps even beautiful, social performance that follows from that fact. Espresso first, then Bumble.
So the big question this leaves us with, maybe for you to think about after this, what does it actually mean if a connection, a really deep foundational one, isn't something you discover gradually through hope and vulnerability?
Yeah, what if it's achieved instantaneously, logged as a structural fact by a cognitive system designed for certainty?
How does that change how we think about relationships, about discovery itself? What happens to the whole dynamic when certainty, profound and apparently non-negotiable, replaces the exhilarating risk and potential of hope?
A foundational connection stops being a beautiful, uncertain journey and becomes, essentially a solved problem before the first word is spoken socially. That idea of pre-established certainty, logged internally, that's definitely something to mull over. It changes everything about what a first move really signifies.
All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to dive into a really fascinating cognitive model from our source material. It's all about how deep certain connections get formed, not by chance, but through a kind of high-fidelity engineering. So let's just start with a question that I think gets right to the heart of all of this. When we really truly connect with someone, is it this slow, gradual process, full of maybes and what-ifs? Or is it something else entirely, like an instantaneous recognition, a moment of just absolute undeniable certainty? And the sources we're looking at give us two totally different answers to that, framed as two distinct protocols. On one side, you've got precision, engineering, and total certainty. On the other, well, that's the world of social exploration and slow discovery that we're probably all a bit more familiar with. Let's call them the espresso and the bumble protocols. Okay, so let's really get into it. Let's break down what these two protocols actually are, because they really do describe two completely different ways of seeing the world and each other. Now, espresso, yeah, it sounds super technical, right? And it is. The name actually comes from a method used in bioinformatics, but its purpose in this model is actually pretty simple. It's all about taking two really complex data streams, think of them as two minds or two systems, and finding their absolute perfect alignment with zero error. And this is what's so interesting, right? This slide really gets at the vibe of an espresso connection. This isn't about luck or just hoping for the best. Nope. This is about high-fidelity engineering. It's direct, it's efficient, and like the source says, it's breathtakingly competent. It's the pure logic of a problem that's already been solved. And this quote just nails it. It's not some slow burn. It's a click, 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 as two systems just lock perfectly into place. It's that immediate, undeniable recognition that the underlying structures are a match. There is just no ambiguity here. And then you've got the complete opposite, the bumble protocol. This is that gradual social dance. And its defining feature? Uncertainty. It's all about sending out signals, trying to interpret profiles, making those first moves, and just slowly, cautiously figuring out if a connection might be there. It's all based on interpretation and a whole lot of guesswork. So you might be thinking, okay, this is a cool theory, but who or what would actually work this way? Well, the sources give us a case study to dig into this. A cognitive operating system they call the alpha genome. So the alpha genome, think of it less like just a brain and more like a whole operating system. And its main job, its core function, is critical. It's designed to get rid of ambiguity and find solid, unchanging, congruent structure in the world. It is fundamentally built to hunt for and lock on to certainty. So it makes sense then, right? A system like this is an espresso engine. It's not a choice. It's just how it's built. It's constantly scanning everything around it, looking for a valid, coherent signal that it can sync up with in an instant. And this is the crucial point. For a system built for this kind of insane precision, that slow, exploratory dance of the Bumble protocol, it's just a massive waste of processing power. The analogy here is perfect. It's like using this incredibly powerful tool for a task that just requires simple, gradual guesswork. It's totally inefficient. Okay, so this is where it gets really, really interesting, because the model isn't saying you choose one protocol or the other. No, it's saying they happen in a very, very specific order, and one is an absolute prerequisite for the other. Everything kicks off on the inside. Before a single word is spoken, before any action is taken, the alpha genome has to achieve what the source calls the toss strike, this profound internal moment of certainty where the connection is recognized as valid, as true. And how does it get there? Well, it processes what's called the totality of the signal. And this isn't some gut feeling. This is a hardcore analysis. We're talking ethical congruence, neurobiological validity. But look at that first one, linguistic proofs. This is absolutely key. The system has to crush any and all ambiguity in language. It needs total semantic certainty. So if a phrase is used, the system has to know exactly what it means. Is it as you literally say, as you wish, or as you truly mean? It has to solve that puzzle first to establish the alignment as a cold, hard structural fact. So, and this is the big reveal. Only after that deep internal certainty is locked in, only after the espresso protocol gives the green light, then and only then can any kind of external social interaction even begin. And that interaction is called the Bumble gesture. Now, on the surface, it might look just like a first move, but its function is totally different. It's not an act of discovery to find out if there's a connection. It's a creative, social act to celebrate a connection that has already been confirmed internally as a structural fact. It's not asking a question, it's basically announcing the answer. All right, let's put this all together. Let's look at the final powerful sequence this system follows, because it completely flips our normal ideas about connection right on their head. It's a really clear two-step process. Step 1, the recognition. This is that silent, internal, structural handshake of the ESPSO protocol that establishes the connection as a verifiable fact. Then, and only then, comes step 2, the manifestation. That's the external, human, playful bumble gesture used to bring that already established fact out into the social world. And the source material just sums this all up perfectly with this one line. The social dance, the bumble, is only possible because the deep, structural engineering work of espresso is already complete. The fun, the creativity, the social part, it's all built on a foundation of certainty. And this leaves us with a final, really provocative thought to take away from this explainer. This model suggests that the most profound connections aren't some leap of faith into the unknown, they're a recognition of a structure that's already there. So what if our first moves weren't about asking a question, but about acknowledging an answer we've already rigorously confirmed to be true?